This place is one of the oldest settlements in the North American continent. People began living here 7,000 to 9,000 years ago. Exactly here on the site of the ancient Lake Texcoco, the capital of the almighty Aztecs Tenochtitlan rose several centuries ago. Today, this city is home to 3 UNESCO World Heritage sites and over 21 million people. This is Mexico City. The pulsing heart of Mexico, a true city of contrasts, where modern buildings stand side by side with ancient artifacts of past civilizations. Today we'll have an exciting journey through its undergrounds to uncover the hidden secrets beneath the streets of Mexico City. You'll see things that will forever change how you perceive this incredible place. What lies beneath Mexico City? Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel to see more fascinating content. Shall we begin our story underground? At the very top layer of Mexico City, at a depth of 5 to 20 centimeters, 2 to 8 inches, lies the road surface made of asphalt, concrete, or paving stones. This layer's thickness varies depending on the road type. Beneath the asphalt or concrete at a depth of around 40 centimeters, 16 inches, there's a layer of gravel or crushed stone which ensures stability and drainage. Under the road surface foundation, at a depth of up to 50 centimeters, 20 inches, a sand cushion is often laid to level the surface and improve drainage. At a depth of up to 60 centimeters, 24 inches, you'll find communication cables for telephone and internet, unless these wires are not laid in the air, i.e. on utility poles. The same goes for power supply lines, which are connected directly to homes. Some of these lines are laid above ground, but others can be buried at depths of up to 1 meter, 3.3 feet, depending on the line's specifications and safety requirements. Water pipes and gas supply lines run at about the same level, although there might be some slight variations. This layered cake can vary in thickness by several meters, depending on the location, the age of the specific infrastructure, and other conditions. Let's go down further to a depth of 1.5 meters, 5 feet. Here we'll find a mysterious underground structure, cavities shaped like truncated cones. These are 3,000-year-old tombs located beneath Chapultepec Park. The site was discovered by archaeologists from the National Institute of Anthropology and History, INAH, in 2023. In 5 of these tombs, scientists found human remains, 4 female and 1 male, all in a crouched position. Because of their inverted conical shape with a truncated top, they're also known as botelon or bell tombs. A total of about a dozen 3,000-year-old tombs were found. But what makes this burial site so unique? Well, let's start with the fact that Chapultepec Park itself is a place rich in history. It is situated in the center of a natural rock formation. The Toltecs named the area Grasshopper Hill, which would later be called Chapultepec in Nahuatl, meaning at the Grasshopper Hill. During the Classic period, 200 to 900 AD, the region was inhabited by the Teotihuacan culture. A bit later, the Tepanecs from the Azcapotzalco and the Mexica people, the Aztecs, settled here. When the Mexica took control of the Valley of Mexico, the hill was considered sacred and used as a burial site for their rulers' ashes. Later, the hill became the site of one of the final major battles between the Mexica and the Spanish conquistadors when the Spanish built Chapultepec Castle in 1785 as a summer retreat for colonial viceroys. But what makes this burial site unique is that it dates back to the pre-Classic period, which lasted from 2500 BC to 250 AD. How did it manage to remain intact for so long, having gone through such dramatic historical periods? It was actually due to a volcanic eruption. For us to imagine, this community was living here before the Chitli volcano erupted and the formation of the Pedregal de Coyoacán. And this subsoil was preserved intact for more than 3,000 years. That's what's fantastic. says excavation coordinator Maria de Lourdes Lopez Camacho. In other words, the volcanic ash seemed to have wrapped this place like a blanket, creating a protective shield that preserved the ancient tombs for millennia. The last major eruption of Schittler occurred around 245 to 315 AD, when it destroyed the city of Quilquico, an important archaeological site in what is now the Tlalpan district. According to Maria de Lourdes Lopez Camacho, the discovery of these tombs indicates the existence of a large settlement in the Lomas de Chapultepec area on the outskirts of the forest during the early and middle pre-classic periods 2500 to 400 BC. On top of that, this is the first time that funerary architecture from the earliest agricultural settlements has been discovered in the area now occupied by the western part of Mexico City, and at such a high altitude too, 2,416 meters above sea level. A bit higher, the archaeological team discovered 3 burials in rectangular stone containers oriented along the east-west axis. The difference in tomb shapes led them to conclude that the settlement mentioned earlier existed long after the pre-classic period. Archaeologists retrieved various artifacts from the tombs. Some were placed there as burial offerings. All these items were sent to the National Museum of History at Chapultepec Castle for further study. Now let's continue our journey through the underground Mexico City. At around 5 meters, 16 feet below the surface, we encounter ongoing excavations at Templo Mayor, a complex of sacred Aztec structures. Closer to the surface, you can already admire the ruins of the very heart of Tenochtitlan, the ancient capital of the Aztecs. Why is this place called Templo Mayor? This is the Spanish name for the main temple of this lost civilization. The Aztecs themselves called it RYV. It's hard to believe that until the 1980s, few people knew of its existence. And as is often the case, it was discovered by chance. In 1978, workers laying electrical cables 2 blocks from the city's central square accidentally uncovered an intricately carved stone monolith. It depicted a dismembered and decapitated woman. They immediately realized that they'd stumbled upon something special, and they surely had. Archaeologists were called in, and they quickly identified the figure on the monolith as the Aztec goddess of Coyolxauhqui. Her name is sometimes translated as painted with bells or bells her cheeks. But what's more interesting is the mythology surrounding her. According to the legend, Coyolxauhqui was the sister of Huitzilopochtli, the Aztec patron god who killed her when she tried to murder their mother. A rather intense family dramatic, but such bloodthirstiness is rather common in ancient belief systems. The discovery of the monolith was just the beginning of a series of remarkable finds that eventually led to the unearthing of Templo Mayor, the main temple of the Aztecs, right in the center of modern Mexico City. Mexico's capital was built on the site of another capital, Tenochtitlan, the heart of the once great Aztec Empire. Templo Mayor held a central sacred place in the Aztec capital. Crowned with twin temples dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, the god of war, and Xaloc, the god of rain, it was the epicenter of Aztec religion and effectively the center of the universe for this people. It was also the site of state ceremonies, coronations, and countless human sacrifices. The blood of these sacrifices was believed to nourish and appease the 2 great gods to whom the temple was dedicated. Templo Mayor was first built during the reign of Izcuatli from 1427 to 1440 AD. The temple was then enhanced by his successor, Moctezuma I, and later expanded during the reign of Ahuitzotl from 1486 to 1502. These and other rulers used the resources and labor of neighboring states as a tribute to construct a more impressive temple than their predecessors. The construction site was chosen with utmost care as the temple was a stone enhancement of the original shrine that the first settlers of Tenochtitlan built in honor of Huitzilopochtli. Over the years, the temple grew, with new layers being added on top of the old ones. These layers were used to ritually bury offerings and treasures. At the peak of the Aztec civilization, Templo Mayor was the most important structure in the heart of a large-scaled area measuring 365 meters, 1,200 feet on each side. The The site could accommodate up to 78 different structures, but Templo Mayor was undoubtedly the tallest and dominated the architectural assembly of the city. The temple itself was a pyramid standing 60 meters, 180 feet tall, with 4 tiers and 2 staircases on the western side leading to the top. The pyramid was aligned along the east-west axis, so standing at the top of the stairs, one could face east and see Mount Tlaloc. On the days of the equinox, the rising sun would pass directly between the 2 shrines on the upper platform. Since the late 1970s, excavations in Mexico City have been almost continuous. The authorities have even decided to demolish several buildings in the area to facilitate these efforts. It was eventually discovered that the pyramid was actually a sequence of pyramids, each built over its smaller predecessor. The original primitive platform dating back to 1390 AD was also uncovered. In the city centre, archaeologists found around 40,000 artifacts, including mirrors made of shiny obsidian, shells of Pacific turtles highly valued by the Aztecs, and precious jade turquoise masks. Each discovery was more astonishing than the last, all attesting to the incredible wealth of the lost empire. The new civilization that came from across the ocean buried the legacy of the Aztecs, buried it in every sense beneath itself. Now it's time to leave this remarkable place, as many more fascinating things are waiting to be discovered on our journey. But first, a bit of background. Ironically, near the Templo Mayor, next to the destroyed main temple of the Aztecs, stands the currently active main temple of the very destroyers themselves, the Metropolitan Cathedral of the Assumption of the Most Blessed Virgin Mary. This cathedral is one of the largest and oldest in colonial America. For symbolic reasons, it was even partially constructed using stones from the demolished Aztec temple dedicated to the goddess of war, Huitzilopochtli. The crypt of the archbishops lies directly below the cathedral, 4 to 5 meters underground. The crypt is located beneath the cathedral's floor under the altar of the kings. Here we find the cenotaph of Juan de Zamaga, the first archbishop of Mexico. For reference, a cenotaph is a monument similar to a tombstone, but located in a place where there are no remains of the deceased. Essentially, a symbolic grave. Atop the cenotaph is a sculpture of the resting archbishop with a stone skull in the Mexican style nearby. It might seem like an odd combination, but it actually makes sense. Zamaga was considered a benefactor of the indigenous people of the Americas because he defended them from the abuses of the Spanish rulers. The skull was included in the composition as a kind of offering. The walls of the cenotaph featured dozens of bronze plaques indicating the burial sites of other former archbishops of Mexico City, including Cardinal Ernesto Caripio y Ahumada. The floor is covered with small marble slabs. These aren't just ordinary slabs, they cover niches containing the remains of other people. There are other crypts and niches under the cathedral where other religious figures are buried. Some of them are located beneath chapels. There are quite many of them, a total of 16 chapels surrounding the cathedral. So there are plenty of underground spaces here, but it's time for us to move on. Once again, at a depth of 5 meters, 16 feet, we can see a subterranean chamber that clearly has nothing to do with the Spanish colonizers. This is clearly an authentic Aztec structure. We're near the Aztec royal crypt located close to the Templo Mayor. But there is a problem. The chamber is flooded with water. How can we explore it? Let's start from the beginning, or rather from 2006. No, actually 1985. Why such a strange timeline? Let's explain. On Thursday, September 19th, 1985 at 7:18 a.m. local time, one of the most devastating earthquakes in history of the Americas struck Mexico City. There were casualties and widespread destruction. Due to severe damage, an old colonial building in the city center had to be demolished as part of recovery efforts. Who could have known that thanks to this demolition, an astonishing discovery would be made 22 years later? The fact is that many Aztec relics cannot be uncovered for a simple reason. As we mentioned, the Spanish built their city directly on top of the Aztec capital. Half a century later, these buildings became valuable historical relics, and no one would consider demolishing them for excavations. Exceptions do happen, but they are extremely rare. However, in 1985, nature took upon itself to destroy one of these buildings. And in 2006, archaeologists discovered something remarkable at the site. First, they found a massive monolith with a carved image between Argentina and Guatemala streets beside the Templo Mayor at a depth of about 5 meters, 15 feet. The word massive here doesn't do this thing justice. In fact, the monolith measured 417 by 362 centimeters, 164 by 142 inches, was 40 centimeters thick, almost 16 inches, and weighed 12 metric tons. It turned out that beneath this monolith was an entrance to an underground chamber. The passage was filled with water, stones, and mud. The excavations required extreme caution and care, as it was unclear how historically valuable every square inch of the interior might be. They decided to make use of advanced technology by thoroughly scanning the surrounding surface with ground-penetrating radar. Finally, it was found that there were at least 4 chambers underground, and soon the puzzle pieces began to fall into place. The image on the monolith was not just a random Aztec-style carving, but a portrait of Teotihuacán, an Aztec deity. She was always depicted as a woman with massive claws and blood streaming from her mouth. The goddess was so terrifying to the Aztecs that they usually buried her images face down. However, this particular image was facing upwards. The key detail was that the goddess held a rabbit with 10 dots on its right paw. Scholars interpreted this as a reference to the 10th year of the rabbit, or 1502 in our calendar. This was a significant year for the Aztecs, as it marked the death of Emperor ReYOuverse. This discovery was shaping up to be a global sensation. All findings suggested that under the long-demolished building, for the first time in history, scientists had found the tomb of an Aztec ruler. Everyone was astonished, as this discovery had almost political significance for Mexico, not to mention cultural. The only thing left was to access the flooded chambers and explore them without causing any damage. This must be an easy task, right? The most optimistic archaeologists hoped to enter the tomb within the same year. However, for reasons that remain unclear, the work stretched on for decades. Good news finally came in 2019, and even then, it didn't directly involve the presumed tomb, but something that was kind of in that area. Very close to the previous find, archaeologists discovered a stone reservoir with astonishing relics. These included the bones of a jaguar and a young boy, who at the time of his death was around 9 years old. He was dressed to resemble Huitzilopochtli, the Aztec god of war. The jaguar too was donned in warrior clothes. Of course, to a layperson, these artifacts might look like an incomprehensible jumble, but archaeologists were thrilled because they realized what they were dealing with. The boy wore a jade necklace and something resembling a cloak or wings made from hawk bones. On what would have been the jaguar's back, experts found an intricately carved wooden medallion, possibly also dedicated to the god of war. Beneath the bones of the child and the jaguar were the bones of a roseate spoonbill, a bird from the flamingo family, long associated with Aztec warriors, and the nobility of Tenochtitlan. Next to these intriguing finds, the sarcophagus contains seashells and coral fragments, which had been brought from the coastal waters of Yucatan and Belize, nearly 1,000 miles away. Researchers believe that the location of this tomb was once part of a circular ritual platform that stood in front of the twin pyramids, which made up what is now referred to as the Templo Mayor. According to reports from people in Cortes' entourage, Aztec priests placed the cremated remains of Aztec emperors on this circular stone platform, along with carefully selected offerings. The combination of factors, the giant burial slab depicting the goddess and the rich secondary sacrificial burials, strongly suggested that the urn containing Emperor ReYouverse's ashes were somewhere very close, perhaps literally under our feet. By the time the COVID-19 lockdown was implemented, just over 10% of the tomb had been excavated and studied. Currently, the efforts continue with varying intensity. The intriguing question remains, will archaeologists finally discover the resting place of the great Emperor ReYouverse? We hope to find this out very soon, and with that hope, let's continue our exciting journey. But this time let's descend even deeper, down to about 7 meters, 23 feet into the abandoned legacy of another era. The remains of the former National Ammunition Factory, Fábrica Nacional de Cartuchos, located beneath Chapultepec Park. This site was so neglected that the very existence of these ruins was something of a hypothesis until 2016. That was when these underground galleries were first discovered. It wasn't until 2022 that the most significant findings were made. When monitoring the construction of the Chibatito pedestrian road, which was supposed to connect the first and second sections of Chapultepec Forest, a group of researchers from the National Institute of Anthropology and History, INAH, discovered partially decayed ammunition and a newly uncovered chamber measuring 15 square meters, 160 square feet. Remarkably, the structure had multiple levels. Fábrica Nacional de Cartuchos was an ambitious project aimed at reducing Mexico's dependence on American weapons during World War I. María Dolores López Camacho, whom you already know, was appointed to lead the team of archaeologists. According to her, this discovery confirms her own hypothesis. The elevation visible in Rosario Castellanos Park, right in the area where the monument to the writer is located, is not a natural formation, but rather a thin layer of soil covering the structural complexes of the National Ammunition Factory. What makes this place even more fascinating is that it represents two distinct areas. Part of the structures include sections of adobe walls that belonged to Casamata, a colonial fort destroyed during the Battle of Molino del Rey against American forces on September 8, 1847. So what eventually happened here, and why did this entire structure end up underground? By the late 1940s, the factories had fallen into despair and all the machinery was dismantled and removed to the powder factory in Santa Fe, Mexico. Only these massive walls and tunnels remained. In the 1950s, this area became part of Chapultepec Forest, and nature quickly took over, covering all the traces of the dramatic events under the soil and vegetation. Shall we delve even deeper? At a depth of 10 meters, 33 feet, we find the Rio de la Piedad. Yep, it's an underground river. And it's not the only one in Mexico City. There are two other relatively large underground rivers, Rio Consolado and Rio Churubusco. How did these rivers end up underground? Once they were picturesque streams amid equally picturesque landscapes surrounding a lake. But the rapidly growing metropolis quickly devoured both the lake and the rivers themselves. Here's how it happened. Starting in the 1930s, Mexico City's population experienced explosive growth, reaching 1 million residents. Since then, more and more people have flocked to the city, and by 1950 it faced numerous issues, including overpopulation and flooding, a lack of public services, roads and drainage infrastructure. Additionally, there were losses of agricultural land and health problems due to the improper use of rivers and canals. The authorities undertook projects to address these issues. One of the initiatives involved covered up the bodies of water, which had long ceased to be crystal clear and had turned into reservoirs of wastewater. For years, the tributaries had become centers of infection, used as toilets, garbage dumps and laundries. Between 1954 and 1967, the city undertook efforts that ultimately forced major rivers that once flowed through some parts of the city underground. Rio de la Piedad was the first to be hidden underground, to make way for the first viaduct and to make room for the increasing flow of vehicles. The same happened to the rivers Churubusco, Consolado and Mixcoac, which once flowed into Lake Texcoco. The lake itself had been drained much earlier. Other rivers that disappeared under concrete include San Juan de Dios in the Talpan district, Miramontes, Tacubaya, and San Angel, also known as Rio Chico or Tizapan. One of the last rivers to be encased in concrete pipes was the Los Remedios River. Now, thousands of cars drive over Mexico City's historic rivers every day. Sometimes, romantics propose initiatives to restore the natural state of at least some of the rivers. About 10 years ago, architect Elias Catan proposed a project to revive the Rio de la Piedad. Admittedly, the concept looked very picturesque and appealing, but as we can see, there hasn't been much progress in this direction over the past 10 years. The Rio de la Piedad, like the other mentioned rivers, still looks like this. On this somber note, let's move on even deeper underground, but this time we'll explore as deep as we want to. We're going as deep as 10, 20, even 36 meters, 115 feet. Here lies the deepest point of the second largest subway system in North America, next to New York City's. The grand opening ceremony of the Mexico City Metro took place on June 19, 1967 at the intersection of Chapultepec and Bucareli Avenues. Today, the Mexico City Metro consists of 12 lines with 195 stations. The network stretches over 226 kilometers, 140 miles in total. The Metro includes 115 underground stations, 55 surface-level stations, 24 elevated stations, and 1 overhead station, totaling 184 stations within Mexico City itself, with an additional 11 stations located in the state of Mexico. This is a mixed-type metro system. Remarkably, it even includes rubber-tired trains. If someone were to bet us $10 on this, we would have wagered all $100 that such a thing didn't exist and that it was some sort of joke or meme. But it does exist, including right here in Mexico City. So where exactly are we now? We're on the deepest line of the Mexico City Metro, Line 7. As mentioned earlier, its depth reaches up to 36 meters, 118 feet below street level in some places. This line was opened in 1984 and 1985. It has 14 stations and stretches 18 kilometers. Geographically, the line runs from north to south. The Mexico City Metro has seen its share of dramatic stories. Particularly remarkable is what happened to the metro system on the morning of September 19, 1985, when an 8.0 magnitude earthquake struck in Mexico City. Many buildings and streets sustained serious damage, making surface travel challenging, but the metro remained largely unaffected. This was thanks to the forward-thinking engineers who designed the tunnels and stations with rectangular structures instead of arches, making them earthquake-resistant. On the day of the earthquake, the metro still almost completely halted operations, at least in part due to fears of electrical hazards. At the time, there were 101 stations, 32 of which were closed to the public for several weeks following the event. However, Line 4 continued to operate as usual. The metro's construction is also tied to countless archaeological discoveries. In this respect, the Mexico City Metro is a cousin of the Rome Metro, where almost no construction project is completed without excavations. During the construction of the Mexico City Metro, more than 20,000 ancient artifacts from various periods of indigenous history were uncovered, including parts of pyramids, an altar to the Mexican god ReYOUniverse, a sculpture of the goddess Coatlicue, and mammoth remains. The ReYOUniverse altar is now located at Pino Suarez Station between lines 1 and 2, and the National Institute of Anthropology and History, INAH, calls it the smallest archaeological site in Mexico. At Zocalo Station, there are 3 large models depicting the area during the Aztec period, the Middle Ages, and later periods. And this isn't the only exhibit in the Mexico City Metro. In fact, there's even an entire museum dedicated to the history and development of the Mexico City Metro. The museum is located at Mixcoac subway station, which lies at the intersection of Line 12 and the deepest Line 7. About half of the exhibits in the Metro Museum are dedicated to the construction of the subway and include many truly impressive hand-drawn architectural sketches, a craft that is slowly becoming extinct in the modern era. There are also numerous pictures of the construction process. A stellar team of architects, including Felix Candela and Rina Lasso, assisted in the planning of the metro system, and examples of their work are also on display here. You'll also see the minimalist design created by Lance Wyman for the station typography. In 1969, instead of advertising posters, the city featured massive electronic billboards displaying neon-toned photographs of Mexico. One of the museum halls showcases fragments of these photos and copies of the original drawings. Another section features images of subway attendants guiding passengers to leather seats during the early years of the subway system. At the end of the museum, there is a permanent exhibition featuring a collection of artworks from the Pascual Cultural Foundation. At the end of the museum, there's a permanent exhibition featuring a collection of artworks from the Pascual Cultural Foundation. Where else can we go to further explore underground Mexico City? Is there anything even deeper? Absolutely, and you'll be amazed at just how deep this something goes. We're descending to a depth of 50 meters, 164 feet, and here we'll find the sewage system. It's important to note that the population of Greater Mexico City area exceeds 20 million people. That's more than the entire state of Florida with all its cities and towns. Or half of modern Spain. Yep, half of all Spain living in a single city. So how epic must a sewer system of such a city be? Well, it's exactly as epic as it needs to be. Greater Mexico City is serviced by a unified, combined sewer system that collects municipal, industrial, and stormwater wastewater. Below ground, it comprises 11,900 kilometers, 7,400 miles, of standard and medium-sized pipes, plus an additional 118 kilometers, 73 miles of underground collectors and tunnels. In every home, from each sink, toilet and bathtub in Mexico City, there's a pipe that drains wastewater into a common household pipe. From there, the waste flows into larger pipes. To ensure the sewage flows by itself, all pipes are slightly inclined. That's why the entire system becomes deeper and deeper as the waste flows into increasingly larger pipes. The sewer eventually drains into the largest sewer wells called interceptors. In total, the metropolis has 9 of these structures. From these interceptors, the wastewater flows into the main sewer lines, particularly the central drainage system. Recently, this central artery received an epic upgrade. We find it at a depth of up to 200 meters, 656 feet. It's the gigantic sewer collector known as El Túnel Emisor Oriente, TEO. A giant sewer collector that took 10 years to build and was finally opened in 2019. Without it, the capital city faced serious challenges in handling wastewater and stormwater. It's called the largest sewage project in the world. A consortium of 5 major companies worked on it, and the tunneling was done using state-of-the-art tunnel boring machines. A total of 23.4 billion pesos. $1.4 billion was invested in the construction of the Eastern Collector. The tunnel stretches for 62.5 kilometers, almost 39 miles. To prevent collapse, it was constructed using a lining with segmented rings made of concrete and steel. Here's where it starts. And here is where it ends. It is expected that this tunnel will finally put an end to the severe flooding that periodically plagues the Valley of Mexico. The first recorded major flood in Mexico City occurred as far back as 1555, after the Spanish conquest of the country. The Spanish attempted to modernize the sewage system built by the Olmecs and the Aztecs, but their efforts were unsuccessful. Subsequent attempts to create an efficient drainage system for Mexico City were made in 1788, 1900, 1962 and 1975. The main issues with all these projects were their relatively short length and low slope angle for natural water drainage. As a result, they had low capacity and quickly silted up. For example, the Great Drainage Canal, which opened in 1900, had a capacity of 80 cubic meters of water per second by 1975, but by 2008 it was down to just 15 cubic meters. During this period, the population of Greater Mexico City grew from 10 million to over 20 million, which significantly exacerbated the sewage problem. Another enormous collector, Emisor Central, which we mentioned earlier, has lost up to 40% of its capacity since its launch in 1975 due to subsidence and reduced slope angle. Based on the past 5 years, the Emisor Oriente tunnel seems to have solved this long-standing problem for Mexico City, at least for now. And finally, let's take a glimpse into the future. A future we all want to believe in. It's quite possible that soon, at a depth of 300 meters, 984 feet below ground in Mexico City, you'll find an inverted skyscraper, aptly named by its creators as the Earth Scraper. Yep, it's exactly what it sounds like, a massive underground building, structure. It's hard to find a word to adequately put it. This architectural, engineering, infrastructural, and urbanistic project is only comparable in scale to the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Proposed by the Mexican architectural firm BNKR Arquitectura, it offers a radically new approach to addressing the challenges of overpopulation and limited space in a metropolis. The Earth Scraper is envisioned as an upside-down pyramid that descends deep into the earth. The upper part will be at ground level and will gradually narrow down, as it goes deeper. At ground level, the area of the structure will be around 24,000 square meters, 258,000 square feet, equivalent to Mexico City's main square, Plaza de la Constitución, or Zócalo. The earth scraper will include residential and commercial spaces, creating a unique underground environment. A significant part of the building will naturally be allocated for offices and retail spaces. The plan also includes the creation of museums, exhibition halls, and cultural centers. The central atrium of the pyramid will be equipped with a glass dome providing ventilation and allowing natural light to enter. This will help reduce electricity consumption and create comfortable living and working conditions. The project incorporates the use of renewable energy sources such as solar panels and energy recovery systems. This innovative solution is designed for megacities facing issues of overpopulation and limited space. If successfully implemented, it could serve as a model for other cities around the world seeking sustainable and creative ways to develop urban environments. Let's hope this vision will become a reality.